Marks?
Present.
Langston?
Here.
Simmons?
Here.
Lunsford?
Present. And a quorum is present. First on the agenda is audience comments. This is an opportunity that members of the community have to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda. I know that there are parents here that want to discuss Odyssey. I would like to say that if you are in a group, could you please appoint a representative on behalf of your group? I know that Odyssey issue is a very important issue to the board. We would like to use this opportunity to get an understanding of what your experience is. And from that, we'll take that information and determine which one we want to go into discussion about in more detail. But we do want you to know before we even start the discussion, that we recognize it is very important. So if anyone has a comment, I invite them to the podium now. First on the list that I have here is Ms. Merle Huckabee. Please step forward with your comment.
I'm Merle Huckabee, parent of Miracle Huckabee from Flossmoor Hill. I'm back. And I'm back because the parents believed last month at the Board of Education meeting that we would be getting answers at this meeting tonight regarding what we did, present to you last month's meeting. But I'm understanding that it's at the committee of the whole meeting is probably where we should have attended to get those answers. What I would like to know, I'm seeking answers as to why the safety hazard report that was submitted by Mr. Doster, the superintendent, to IDOT, supposedly on 10/16, but wasn't received until 10/23 when it was overnighted after much follow-up by myself, was incorrectly submitted, meaning that it did not have the proper dates or signatures, and why it has not been resubmitted. Secondly, I'm just trying to figure out if you're, really basically with that, is there some kind of tactic, delay tactic? I'm just wondering if you knew that without the proper signatures and dates, that IDOT could not formally review that. And remember, you sent me a notice saying that this was going to be sent out. Secondly, I reviewed all of the Board of Education and Committee of the Whole minutes that were available online in regards to the Flossmoor Hills bus routes, and particularly the Payroll. I believe there's a great deal of erroneous information that was presented and cited at that meeting, according to the notes that I've seen in the minutes. In particular, I'm talking about the meeting from 8/12 and 8/25. There are many erroneous statements. The one that is most astounding is that the ISBE, which is the Illinois State Board of Education, will not reimburse the district for the kids riding on those hazardous routes. In light of new information that has been received from ISBE, that was sent email on 10/21 to Fran LaBella and Craig Doster, Michael Slife had cited that he had seen the survey and that the survey had met the hazardous points. The board did not include the two judgment points, but without that and including an error that was made, these routes are hazardous. I also followed up with Jim Stoner at IDOT in light of the report that was sent. That is not a formal report, that has not been signed, it's in no way that IDOT could even begin to work on this report. He looked at the report and also stated that those stops are hazardous based on what he is seeing. And in light of all of that, you have an email from Michael Slife that went to Fran LaBella and Craig Doster stating that if this report was updated and signed and submitted properly, that the Illinois State Board of Education would pay for our children to ride those buses, that they are reimbursable. But all through their notes, you're saying that they're not reimbursable, that the stops are not hazardous. The other thing, finally, that I want to conclude on this is this, and I quote Jim Stoner from IDOT as saying this, that if a child should get hit out there, this district will wish they had formally submitted an IDOT. Regardless as to what your point systems come up to, something needs to be formally on record. If not, you don't begin to have the money to pay for our child's life, any of them that should die out there. Now, the hope is that it won't happen, but for preventive measures, we should not have children walking in the street against traffic And it's just that simple, when there are no sidewalks. And the board did say last year that this would be waived for 2 years, this fee. And that you would work with the village of Hazel Crest. You would also work with Flossmoor. This didn't happen. I don't understand how this all came back, but I do know that we have new information. And in light of that new information, I would like this to be put on the agenda for the next committee of the whole and a full discussion made on this topic, and this to get resolved.
Ms. Huckabee, thank you for your information, all of your investigative inquiry that you've done. So we did submit information to the Illinois Department of Transportation, and there is information that they're still seeking from us. And once we get approval from them on what we need to do next, that goes to the Board of Education. So we're working on this as quickly as we can. So as far as other emails that go through that are, I'm kind of confused by that information.
I have a copy of the email that was sent to you and to Fran Lavella from the Illinois State Board of Education because I was CC'd. And I can gladly show your board that. And again, I'm requesting in light of the new information that this be put on the agenda for the next committee of the whole because our children's safety should be a priority to you too.
Once we have all of our information, it will be brought to the Board of Education.
So you're saying that in light of the email that you got from the Illinois State Board of Education, you did not get an email?
We have a process that we follow, and that's what I'll comment on that. And once we have that, we'll bring all the facts because they wanted more information from us. As soon as we have all that and it's done to their satisfaction, it will be brought to the Board of Education.
Who is they?
I'm
I
not
have
here
from
to-
the Illinois State Board of Education.
I'm just letting you know how the process works. So once we get that done, hopefully if it's fairly soon, then we can bring that to the Board of Education. So upon the request that you had made the other day, that is why the Board of Education and myself decided to send more information out because we do care about our children. We sent that information to VOT, see if there's anything that we had missed, and they're taking a look at it. We've spoken to ISBE. Those are the things, but there's a process for this that we need to
But
address.
you didn't CC me like you did before. So I'm feeling like there's no transparency.
I didn't do what?
You did not CC me as you did in the October 16th when you first
The
submitted.
initial letter that I sent out went to everyone on that route, explaining what we did, and we sent it to the congressman, all of our mayors. That went out to every single person, and that was done purposefully. So the Board of Education are well aware of what is going on and how all of that works. So right now, we're in the process, and once that process is addressed, if we come back, we find that it is hazardous, then that will be the determination. Illinois State Board of Education, they're stating that if it is deemed hazardous, then yes, it is reimbursable.
They
But
also
it is
said
not-
based upon their review in that email.
Okay, but the Department of Transportation makes the finalized approval of it. Okay, and then the Board of Education goes to the Board of Education. Once that's taken care of, if there's an approval by the Board of Education, then the Illinois State Board of Ed addresses it.
So why did you CC me on the first submission and then the second submission you left me out of that? I'm trying to figure that out. There's any transparency or there isn't any transparency? Is there something to hide?
The first letter was to let all of the parents know that we listened to you and we're sending that out. Other than that, the rest is board work, and it is a function of the school district in which we have to deal with, so. That's
So
about it.
you didn't CC me, that's what you're saying, and you're not going to like you did the first because you were
No.
transparent the
No,
first
no.
time. Okay,
Okay?
no, not really.
All right.
Thank you.
Just so I'm understanding how this works, there's additional information that you have submitted to the Illinois Department of Transportation, correct?
We sent the same report as what the board has seen. We asked them if we'd missed anything, we calculated anything wrong, please take a second look. The response is there's some information that we need to give them, so they're getting some more of that information. There's some highlighted parts, there may be some parts that are hazardous, there may be some parts that are not.
So have we sent them all the additional information that they're asking for?
Trying to send everything to
Well,
us.
actually,
7 o'clock, I heard from Department of Transportation. Believe it or not, they will not accept anything via email or faxing, so it only has to go through snail mail. So we're caught in that. So yes, the information has been submitted. There's additional things that the board may do, and then there is one route that it looks like would be counted as hazardous even without any additional board information. But they're taking one last look at it and let us know what to give to you. The reason that the forms weren't signed is because we can't sign the forms. The forms say that the board took action, and the board did not take action. But we didn't believe that we had enough points for the board to take action. So what we're looking for is information from IDOT to say, do this and check this box. And based on the information that we have, we didn't believe that there was, based on the examples they give for board judgment points, it didn't seem that any of our situations fell into that.
Can you give an example of one?
For example, they were saying, if a stop is next to a gas station or some sort of a convenience store where there's excess traffic there and excess hazards, if you will, not already accounted for by the point system. And we couldn't find anything that was not already accounted for by the point system. What we're finding out now, based on what the Department of Transportation is saying, is that throw on, that they may not, that they don't really look for what the reason is. So I'm trying to get some more information from them. So they asked for additional information. We sent them additional information. So we're waiting to hear back from them again. I'm hoping to have information for you by November 24th. How? But again, it would have been a whole lot faster if they would just take the email, but they don't, and they won't take fax either because they want it in color. So, all right. So we're kind of caught up in this, looking at an antiquated system.
So we're hoping for it, Kyle, what's a reasonable expectation to set for us to deliver feedback? And I recognize some of this is out of our control, especially if you use it and things like that. We don't want to set the expectation that we're going to have a dialogue about something in the board meeting, and we don't have information because it hasn't been returned to us. That leads to frustration.
I believe, United States Attorney, I believe we can get it on the November 24th count. But given that everyone's pretty up to date on this as it is, you may want to consider if you don't have all the information back on the 24th, just putting down the December board meeting. But that's really your call.
Yeah, if we don't have it by the 24th, then we will look at it in December. But we are doing everything that is mandated and how we're working with it.
So just so I understand, you present information to us and we make a decision based on what you believe the facts to be at the time of your review.
And my reading of the regulations.
Right. After we got feedback from the community and they had done some additional research, you went back, you looked at it again, you talked to them some more and got additional information, basically saying what it sounds like to me is they're not as cut and dry on what counts and what doesn't count as you were first. You were being more cut and dry.
So we said, let's just send it to them and see what kind of feedback we get. Because the Department of Transportation is really the only one who can say, yes, this is a hazardous route, or no, it is not. The State Board of Ed just waits to see what IDOT gives their sample approval on.
So this person just basically from ISBE was giving their opinion as to whether or not it was hazardous, but that's not binding. So you sent the information and you're waiting for them to respond. And then you're going to present information to us, we can make a decision based on that.
Yes.
So my own position is, let's, stay on them, follow up with them regularly to make sure that, this is an ongoing issue for quite a while.
Well, another thing too, as far as their criteria that they utilize, it's very stringent. I mean, it's like buying a gas station, buying a
Well, it
major
sounds like it's
highway.
not though. You were
Well,
saying
In their
They're
grants, they
saying-
state that it is. But then when you start to talk to them, they're like, so it's what's in writing seems a whole lot more cut and dry than when you start talking to them.
Okay.
So,
And what they're saying right now is maybe one side, maybe not, maybe there's a sidewalk that needs to be put in. So those are the discussions that are taking place.
Thank you. Next on the list is Cameron Nelson.
Craig, if you don't mind, I'd like Beth Reich to go before me.
My name is Beth Reich. I'm a student at Parker as a sixth grader, and I come concerned because of the implementation of the Odyssey program at the junior high level. I found out from my daughter, not from the district, that minutes of her core content subject area was being replaced by Odyssey programming, which is an intervention program. It was one size fits all. Every student was on it for a certain amount of time. When I sought answers from Dr. Work, I was unable to get those answers. I've been in contact with Mrs. Westerland and it's out the 24-hour. Well, you really get Mrs. Westerland, so I haven't gotten an answer back yet as to how to proceed. But I'm asking that either we are offered the opt-out program per board policy 6.260, or that the district work a little bit more effectively at targeting intervention programs towards the students who desperately need them, and we don't waste our resources on children who are in percentiles that do not need those interventions. We could, as parents, supplement those interventions, supplement our children on our own time with maybe some support from the district, some ideas or things like that. My child that is in advanced classes getting A's and in higher percentiles in her MAP scores and such like that does not need to be having time wasted in her core content areas on an intervention program. Thank you. So please advise on how we need to proceed.
We have some, I apologize to the audience for not having a copy for you all, but I will have an electronic copy if anybody wants it. So, as Beth just referred to, we received some news this week, early last week, about kids being required to take time away from science and other core subjects just to do this Odyssey program. I'm sure some of you are familiar that I personally detest Odyssey, but what we're here to talk about is why that decision is made without board authorization, and it's a violation of board policy, and the board should tonight immediately inform its superintendents to follow board policy and rescind it. So what is the policy? Well, we've been told from principals that it's 3 hours per week, 180 minutes of Odyssey is required, 90 minutes of math and 90 minutes of reading. And there were postings on web pages, teachers' web pages last week, which have now been scrubbed, curiously. We have screenshots though. That said that they would be taking 25 minutes out of science and social studies to make the kids sit in front of this Odyssey program. And it was applied to all students without any discrimination of their ability or whether parents objected to it or whether it was even good for the students. It's a mandate across all students. And the 180 minutes specifically appears to apply at Parker, but we're seeing similar mandates coming down at the school level as well. Myself and other parents have been explicitly told that our children cannot opt out of this, they must participate in this, it is a mandatory policy. And so I know when I was told that, I said, well, I see this policy, and I was explicitly told, no, you cannot. And so we're getting this dual message from the administration that it's mandatory and you can't opt out of it, but nobody will tell us what the policy is or why it exists or what its purpose is. Dr. Work specifically refused to answer parents' questions repeatedly last week and directed parents to talk to principals. And this, in my view, is a cop-out. It's her responsibility to set this policy. We all know it came from Dr. Work or Superintendent Doster, not from the principals. We went and talked to the principals, and many parents went and asked the principals, and the principals all either told us we couldn't see this policy or they wouldn't want to talk to us about it and told us to go talk to Dr. Work. So as is increasingly typical in the school district, we get to run around from the administration saying, go talk to the principals. The principals look terrified when you ask them questions because they're apparently not allowed to tell us anything, and we don't get any straight answers. So we were told by Dr. Work specifically, my wife went over there on Friday, that there is no 90-minute directive. Now on Friday, the teachers' web pages, several of them said that this 25 minutes will be coming out of science and social studies. And by Saturday, that has all been erased and disappeared. I certainly would like to know why that is. it shouldn't be, we shouldn't have to play Where's Waldo with what the school district's policies are. We should be able to get a simple, direct answer as to what the policy is and why it exists. We also were specifically told by the board, I have told her that my children will not do Odyssey. I've instructed them not to do it, they're not going to do it. And she says, no, it's mandatory. They must do it. Now, again, we have a superintendent who's running around issuing dictates, but refuses to provide any supporting information, any supporting rationale, any data, anything. So you guys have some copy of the screenshot of the teacher's notes in the packet there. So how many board policies does this directive violate? At least 3. The first one is Board Policy 610, which says the curriculum offered by students by the school district must challenge each student and allow him or her to progress at a rate commensurate with his or her potential. That policy rules out one-size-fits-all dictates across the entire school district. There is absolutely no reason why students who are in the top 20, 30% of their class need to spend 90 minutes a week with Odyssey, which content-wise is clearly designed for lower-performing students. The second problem,
Mr. Nelson, you're approaching your time, so I do want to hear everything you have to say, but can you, as quickly as you can, get it out there?
I will go through this as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
However, you ask for parents to coordinate their presentation on this
We
issue.
also have policies and procedures for audience comments, and maybe know what those are, and I would like to.
Well, which do you want? Do you want 5 parents speaking for 5 minutes each, or do you want me to finish
I
this?
want you to use the time given to you, which you're eating away with right now, having a debate with me. So could you just quickly let us understand what your experience is, so the board can know what they're working with.
One of the other reasons why Odyssey is not working in this case is it's instructionally flawed. They set it on the map scores, but there's a problem with that. First of all, the fall map scores, students come back from summer and their scores are always lower than they were in the spring. And they tend to underreport students' ability. So if you set it by that score, your kid who was doing more advanced math in the spring is now back to doing multiplication, which he already knows, because they set it by the map score. Using spring map testing, well, those points are higher. That also inherently doesn't work. That's testing 6 months old. The kids are not static. They learn new stuff every day. Using a score from 6 months ago, it's no good. Your kids are going to be sitting there in front of the computer doing the same material that they learned last year. Then the scores don't seem to be getting entered into the computer late at all. We've included in the packet examples of, and I have had a 100% success rate of asking parents to check the actual content in Odyssey. And does it match your students' math scores? And the answer is no, it doesn't. And we have several examples in the packet. For one example, a student got 260 in math in his last 2 math scores. You can see this, little screenshot here. What's his math set at? 241. So the entire system is broken. They're asking our kids to sit here and look at math problems that, according to their test scores, they mastered. And they want to spend 90 minutes a week on math, just wasting our kids' time, instead of actually listening from teachers, sitting in front of a computer and watching these math problems that they've already seen. Every parent I've asked to check has had the same experience. Not one of the scores have been set at the right level. So the administration is telling you this fairy tale that, oh, we have the system where math scores are automatically fed into the Odyssey system and it updates. It's not happening. We have to constantly remind teachers to update the scores. It doesn't seem to happen until weeks or months after the math test results come in. Board policy also requires, same policy 610, direct instruction. Professional staff are expected to use direct instruction specifically functioning as a classroom leader. That's your board's policy. Telling kids that they instead are going to spend 3 hours a week learning from a computer is a direct violation of the policy that this board set. The administration has no authority to replace instruction time with computer time. They don't have the authority, and as long as the board lets them do it, they're acting outside of their own authorization.
Okay, Mr. Nelson, reach your time, and thank you. I would like to give Mr. Matthews an opportunity to speak, because he's on the list as well.
I cede my time to Cameron.
We keep hearing from the district how we have fantastic teachers. Well, if we have fantastic teachers, then ask yourself this: what's better use of 3 hours of their time every week? 3 hours working with those fantastic teachers, receiving actual instruction, or 3 hours sitting in front of a broken computer program? I think it's a very difficult question to answer. Now, we have yet another board policy that the administration has violated, another portion of 610. Delivery systems, which I assume Odyssey is, are expected to be data and research-based, which utilize current available resources to achieve academic improvement. Now, I've been to almost all the board meetings the last 18 months, and I've read all the minutes, and I have never actually seen anywhere a research study that says Odyssey is useful or successful. We submitted FOIA requests in the district. They've never provided one. I sent a FOIA request and asked them for just that thing, and the only thing I got back was like a 3-page pamphlet from the company saying Odyssey is great. Curious. So, what does the Department of Education have to say about Odyssey? Well, they have this thing they call What Works Clearinghouse, and what they do is they try to assemble all the academic studies that are out there. They take those studies and they give you a summary of what they say. So, Odyssey Math, for example, they went through about 20 studies, and they said no studies of Odyssey Math meet What Works Clearinghouse's evidence standards, and one study meets those standards with reservations. So, right off the bat, you have the U.S. Department of Education telling us that Odyssey, there's no evidence it actually does anything. There's no evidence that it works. It said the same thing about reading. And you know, what's funny is I don't remember any of this ever being presented to the board before they decided to spend $600,000 on this program.
How much did I catch that?
$600,000 was the number that was
On
discussed.
Odyssey?
That was the number that's in the minutes. If you have actual accounting numbers, maybe you should respond to my FOIA request and give me the documents I asked for. So, another board policy, 6210, requires that any curriculum materials adopted be reviewable. The superintendent or designee shall annually provide a list or description of the textbooks and instructional materials used in the district to the Board of Education. How many of you got the list of what's in Odyssey? You didn't, because not even parents can see what's in there. Nobody can see in advance. Unless you sit down with your kids and do it, there's no way to actually review the content of this thing. Imagine if someone asked you to adopt a textbook and refuse to show you what's in it. That's exactly what they've done with Odyssey. And what parents are finding out is when they sit down and work with Odyssey, the content is garbage. There's nothing there. It's set at levels way below what our kids are capable of. It's just a complete waste of their time. Board policy also requires an explicit rationale, same policy, same board standard, an explicit rationale for adopting particular pieces of curriculum or substituting curriculum, which is the secret directive that was issued last week. There is no explicit rationale, of course, because the board, your administration is doing this in secret and then refusing to tell people why they did it or where the policy is. Experiments, also under Board Policy 640, require approval from the board. The way this is supposed to work is when you try a new thing, you're supposed to do a pilot program. According to board policy, they must have specific goals. They must have a specific measure of success. You're supposed to report to the board about whether it's successful. None of that was done. There's never been any meaningful data out of Odyssey. It's just been adopted and being crammed down students' throats without any regard to whether it actually helps them.
One more minute, Mr. Nelson. Go ahead.
Board policy also requires consideration of parent objections. Parents are supposed to be able to opt out of programs. There's supposed to be an opt-out form. That doesn't exist. Another policy the administration is disregarding. And parents who have asked to opt out have been told, so for example, my kids do Khan Academy. You guys had a presentation from last week explaining how last year I fired the school district for math. I was so sick of the math curriculum for this school district. I told my kids, ignore your teachers, okay? They're great teachers, but the curriculum sucks. I'm going to teach you math. You're going to work in Khan Academy. I'm going to give you your assignments. So my kids went up 30, 40 points on their math scores in 4 months. That's how bad the district was doing in teaching math. It's not because they're that bright. It's because they've been flat for so many years, they wanted to move ahead, and the district is literally holding them back. Now I have time invested in that tool, I can monitor their progress, I think it's a vastly superior tool, Odyssey. But I'm being told my kids are not allowed to use concapping. I've got another one of these propaganda letters we got from Doster today. It says in here, there's something in here about, anytime, anywhere learning, 21st century learning. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Unless, of course, it's not our pre-approved program, and then it's not anytime or anywhere. We're going to cram the same stupid program down your kids' throats without regard to whether it actually works.
Okay.
That's what's actually happening.
Thank you.
Well,
Does the board have any? I'm sorry, that was the end of the list. That was Mr. Matthews and Mr. Nelson would be on the list. Does the board have any comments? Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
I just want to note that I'm not done, and I think the arbitrary limit of 5 or 10 minutes, when parents put a lot of effort in this weekend to put this information together, sort of.
And Mr. Nelson, we have correspondence, and I told you before the call, this is not an opportunity for presentations, this is an opportunity for honest comments. There are rules around audience comments, around with this, with the processes, there's also a separate process, and also a separate form where we have presentations done. That's our committee of the whole. So, we appreciate you sharing what the issues are. Can the board have an opportunity to discuss, if they would like to, how they would like to move forward on this issue?
I just have a question. Sure. If we could have some clarification, there was a statement made that there is a mandate or a new policy with respect to mandatory time that students are to be on Odyssey during core subject. If someone could either confirm or refute that statement, I would appreciate that. Either you.
Dr. Orr, if you want to talk just real quick about how this was implemented last year. Also, I want you to address the pilot program.
So last year, Linda Pratt in May gave a presentation to the board on the Odyssey implementation, and that was at the May Committee of the Whole meeting. Odyssey completion is 70% completion of a folder at 70% accuracy. So that is what the teachers are working on. Odyssey is not an intervention. Odyssey is a resource that was purchased for all teachers. Could Odyssey be used as a resource or as an intervention? Yes. Odyssey could be used as an intervention. That is not why Odyssey was purchased for our staff. Odyssey was purchased as a resource for all of our teachers K through 8 to help them with our math and our reading curriculum.
I guess the clarification I'm looking for, though, is, I understand all of that, is there was a statement made that during science time, students are being instructed to do math Odyssey, and during social studies time, students are being instructed to do reading Odyssey. My question is that in fact the case, or is that erroneous information?
That is at Parker Junior High, so that the burden would not fall only on math and reading, because reading is also something that is taught in social studies, and because of how science and math work together. That is how it was deployed at Parker Junior High, so that there is goal setting that occurs with science and goal setting that occurs with social studies.
Okay, so
Let me ask just a follow-up. That's the same question I just want to ask. So is it mandated that they are working 25 minutes out of their class time on Odyssey?
That would Mrs. Westerlin right here.
Yes, it's not minutes, we've gone to the completion of activities and folders district-wide, and teams were given the autonomy to determine how they were going to all support that across all content areas. So 20 to 25 minutes is being designated in social studies and science classes. The scheduling is a little bit different by grade level, but yes, that is how they're doing it.
Okay, so 20 to 25 minutes of instructional time is being used on Odyssey. That is
I guess I'm trying to understand the logic behind, however, taking 25 minutes out of science for math. Because what that sounds like to me is that whoever made that decision, be it the administration or the principal or whomever, that they're saying that somehow math is more important than science. Because, for example, say in my world, math doesn't mean anything. I don't care anything about math. But say science is everything in my world, and I want my child to receive stellar instruction in science. Someone has made a decision that 25 minutes of my child's science time can be allocated to math. And if I'm a person that doesn't care anything about math, then I'm offended because you've taken 25 minutes from something that I think is important and put it on something that you think is important. And so I need to understand if that's what's going, how that decision was made and why we think that's the best way. And then secondarily, now whispering has thrown off my thoughts, but if there are students that, I'm wondering if we're doing this because math and reading are the things that are tested in math scores. Because if you have a student that's in the 98th percentile in math, but they're in the 50th percentile in science, if science were tested somehow than math, which means nothing, you're giving them additional resources in something that they don't need, and you're taking it away from something that they may need. So I just need to understand that logic.
So twofold, with the next generation science standards, they are asking for us to work in engineering practices. And part of those engineering practices are taking math and science and bringing them together. Also with those engineering practices, they are asking us to work with and say there are social studies concepts that do come in when you are working with science projects. There are math concepts that come in. When you build in those engineering concepts to that, you don't separate out and say there is no writing portion in that, there is no social studies portion in that. So as we are gearing up to implement next generation science standards, we do have to look at cross-curricular components to science, to social studies, to reading, and to math.
And I did that, but I'm sorry guys, and I'll be done when you guys have the floor. If I have a difficult time understanding how Odyssey can do that, because you can't go into Odyssey and say, the 25 minutes of time that my child is spending doing math Odyssey during science is only going to be that portion of math Odyssey, which if that exists, that's cross-curricular with science. We don't do that. So
There is no
you need to, please, you've had your time, seriously. There's no way of controlling that. If they're working in folders and they're saying, I understand that they work in their lowest folder until completion. If their lowest folder is operations, it's going to have them doing operations for 25 minutes, and there may be no science component to that. So I'll let the rest of my board members have an opportunity to speak.
Mr. President, if I can just say that we talked about the fact that the COW is a time when we have discussions about this, and there's a lot of new information or information that I'd like to provide, have the administration have an opportunity to respond to. I know, they did a lot of research here. I want to know what information is. It may be erroneous, maybe yes, maybe, but I think it warrants a discussion rather than this is for comments. So I don't know how to effectively do this, but to move or to ask that this be a larger conversation at a more appropriate time. That this is really good, and I appreciate all the parents and the comments. I just want to make sure that this discussion gives an opportunity for them to respond and for us to actually make a decision about what, if anything, is being done.
But they need to be able to respond to our questions, and if we don't have the opportunity to let them know what we're thinking around this, we've heard from a handful of community members, which we appreciate their comments, but I think in order for us to make a decision, they need to know where our thinking is around this.
Correct.
So I think,
I believe this deserves much more discussion. One, I would like to recommend that we have more discussion around this in a formal presentation from the administration at our meeting, preferably the next time. I was curious as to what the board stands with us.
I think it's my opinion that I think it's an important topic. It's obviously raised some questions about some other things that we have questions around it as well. I think that a county would be more appropriate to have this conversation where we can have it a little bit more in depth and opportunity to present formally.
With that said, I think that the questions are good. I think that if any of us have questions, we should write them down now so that we have a chance to have a meaningful response.
Right.
Yeah, I would add, if you would send me your questions, email them to Kathy, okay? And Cameron, since you've taken a role or lead on this, if you could take questions from the community and email them to me, I'd be more than happy
Dr.
to.
Wolf heard all the community questions over the last week. She knows full well.
I just asked you a question.
Sitting here, feeling like you don't know what the questions are is insult.
I'm asking you a question, if you'll
You got
take
a
input.
list of the issues right in front of you, Craig.
Okay, so I take it you're not?
If more questions come up, everyone will happily.
Please email them to me, so we can work on this, and we'll have a presentation at the next committee, the whole meeting, and clarify some of this misunderstanding.
Okay, so we will follow this in the next council meeting and look for a presentation from the administration.
In the meantime, will the administration be providing an opt-out form as required by board policy?
Mr. Nelson, we will continue this discussion at the next.
That was a question we had.
Next on the agenda is recognition of the students who qualify for the cross-country state meet. Mr. Doster.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Brozinski, if you would please come up to recognize our fine students who
Thank you.
this job representing our school.
Good board. I'd like to introduce two students who qualify for the state meet. I'll introduce them to you and give you the highlights of their season. Hugh Warner. He finished in first place in the conference out of 70 runners. He was 18th place in the sectional out of 77. He was 132nd place in the state out of 213 runners. Next, Judah Epperson. Judah finished 4th place in the conference out of 70, 12th place sectional out of 77 runners, or 9th place in the state out of 213 runners.
Mr. Minsky, can you take the picture together?
Congratulations. You want to do it here or in the hallway somewhere?
Wherever you want.
Why don't we go in the hallway, that way they can continue the board meeting.
Thank you. Next is recognition of school board members. Mr. Doster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Munster. A very special week this week for our school board. I have a resolution that I will be reading to the Board of Education. We have some certificates we will be handing. Also, some of our schools have given some gifts and presentations that will play. But first of all, I would like to read the resolution. So, the resolution states, whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities and in the capacity or change with meeting the community's expectations, aspirations for public education and their children. And whereas school board members are entrusted with guardianship and wise expenditures of scarce tax dollars, and they are reasonable for maintaining and preserving the building grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in trust. And whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear and shared vision of public education for their schools, that sets high standards for the education of all students and requires effective and efficient operations of the district. And whereas school board members adopt public policy to give voice to their leadership and employ superintendent to administer board policy, and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of district performance and compliance with state policy. And whereas school board members selfishly donate countless hours to public service and no compensation. And whereas school board members in Illinois band together 100 years to advocate for quality educational opportunities to their students, to ensure advocacy and necessary education for board members themselves. And whereas employers are supportive of their employees who serve as school board members, generously lending support and time. Employers give their employees the opportunity to better serve the needs of the school district and citizens they represent, who sometimes tremendously sacrificing to the employer. And whereas decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life in their communities, placing them at the forefront of American democracy. Therefore, be it resolved by Flossmoor School District 161 that we proclaim November 15, 2014 as School Board Members Day, as a way to honor these citizens who devote so much of their time and energy for the education of our children. With that being said, I'd like to congratulate you, and if you would, you could come up here, and before we do that, if I could have everyone in the audience, please stand over here, board members, as soon as you receive your certificate from us, if you could shake everyone's hand, we would appreciate it. So if everybody could line up over here, I would appreciate it. Okay, great.
Umbrellas.
Nancy, if you want to lead the way, stand over here. Okay, we'll go ahead and start. Leah Bailey Langston. Lisa Harrell. Christine Marks.
Yeah.
Stephen Freitas. Ray Westford.
On behalf of the board,
Okay, in addition, on Thursday, we'll have a token of our appreciation. Probably we'll contact you on that. Moreover, we have a few videos that our schools have presented, and our first one, I believe, is from Serena Hill. So before we play it, would you like to say something, Ms. Demetrovitz?
Yes, on behalf of Serena Hills, Mr. Freitas, we would like to thank you and the entire board for your amazing efforts, your continued support of supporting excellence, and certainly all that you do for our community of learners. Thank you.
One second. Put on
Before we show
pause.
the video, we would like to present this with you because you are one of our stars, Serena Hill stars, and you are making a difference to last a lifetime. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate your efforts.
We'll find out.
This song is for those who inspire us today, who always lend a helping hand to help show us the way.
Mr. Freitas, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your dedication and commitment to excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. You have made a difference. You have shaped our minds. You have changed the world, one child at a time. You have always been everything you do.
Thank you, G-H-A-K-Y-O-U. Thank you. community. We want to thank you for all your support and guidance and all the time that you sacrifice away from your families to be with us. We appreciate it. We have a video, but also some little goodies here to help with those stressful times.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you for Odyssey. Thank you for the equipment. Thank you for outdoor lunch. Thank you for iPads. Thank you for series at lunch. Thanks, Dad. Thank you for the opportunity to work with PTO. Thank you for the opportunity to have a crown. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Just starting over again.
And next, Spirit.
On behalf of Heather Hill School, we'd like to thank Mr. Mosher for all he does for us. And we will be very brief and summarize the top 10 things that we're appreciative for. Thank you so much.
Number 10, he lives in our community. Number 9, he helps run our schools. Number 8, he's a parent at our school, Heather Hill. Number 7, he's the president of the school board. Number 6, he knows math. He loves education. Number 4, he wants the best of his students. Number 3, he's friendly. Number 2, he's Dylan's dad. And the number 1 reason we appreciate Mr. Munford is number 1, he's my dad.
Okay, and next, Parker.
Yes. Mrs. Marks, I think that for about as long as I've been in the district, I have known you, and you have, and all along, you have served this community in a variety of ways through PTO, parent, and assistant. Always just so dedicated, so committed to ensuring excellence for our students, and that wonderful. So thank you on behalf of the staff and students. Wanted you to know that we absolutely are in good hands with you.
Who do we have left?
That's it. We just have one more representative here. I'm here.
Hills all the time. I know that you have another true love, which is the orange, UI. So your theme is the University of Illinois. There is a small video that's intended out of presentation in here, as well as some SD history. Thank you for all. Thank you.
Before we go into executive session, board members, can I get a picture of you? Mr. Ness, you can take one on the camera, then
Once again, on behalf of the board, I'd like to say thank you for your recognition. You're really happy to serve, and thank you for recognizing us. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Doster.
Thank you, Mr. Winsford. You'll see we have the enrollment dashboard that is up there. Some key numbers to look at is the 1014, the 1010, or 1014 last month, this month, and then last year. You'll see that it's staying fairly steady. The mobility rate in the district, we've taken a look at that. We're about at 15% for this year. In regards to that type of trend. And when we have our board retreat in January, we'll have a little bit of discussion on that and how that compares locally with other school districts in the area. But that we're maintaining status with our students and class sizes at that point. Next thing, building report outs. Building report outs they took place this week. We have one more, and then we will be completed, but that is when all of our leadership teams from the buildings come to us. They meet with us, they discuss, we talk about the curriculum, we talk about data, they report that information out, we ask them what kind of resources that they need to assist. This year we're talking a lot this week we've been talking a lot about our curriculum map. And because that has been dropped on us as well as everyone else in the state of Illinois, the Common Core ELA map will be starting science this spring. We're looking at getting all of the items in line for what the state dictates, and then we are taking a look at if there's any gaps that we need to address to help with our students. We're doing all this analysis at this point. At our board retreat in January, we will give that information. We're taking a look at different types of programs that will be implemented next year, or recommended for implementation, I should say, that will assist. Doing a lot of great things, but as far as the curriculum as it evolves, we're learning more, and we will address that and continue to move forward. So I look forward to that. Next week is American Education Week. Our staff will be celebrating that next week as well. Just want to let the Board of Education know. In addition to that next item will be the instructional planner resources. Instructional planner is the component that we're using to assist with our curriculum mapping. We're working with those types of things. We're looking at the resources. So, for example, a resource is what can help us with our curriculum. So, with a curriculum, you have your standards, which are your goals. You have your methods and how you do it. You have your assessments. And with that, you also have your resources. So the resources that are involved, those are things that need to be looked at so that we can best fit those in. So for example, Odyssey is a resource that we use. So with that being stated, I also have the 2015-16 in-service dates. We are looking, part of the recommendation, that those dates for next year for Teacher Institute Day, as well as school improvement days, will more than likely be full grade level, vertical and horizontal articulation and curriculum mapping to assist our teachers for that. So those will be designated times. Pull-out in regards to the classroom will be extremely minimal next year due to our FIU classes that are after school. That has been started. That's been very successful so far. We have teachers that are signing up. Next semester, we will have more teachers teaching as well. So that's kind of a homegrown professional learning type of have parent-teacher conferences that will take place on the 24th and the 25th. Please be mindful, we have a board meeting on the 24th as well. That's a committee of the whole meeting. So that's all I have from my report at this time. Is there any questions?
No more questions, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have minutes from prior board meetings as well as the people of the gift on Western Avenue. We'd like to take this time to thank those who gave gifts to the district, as well as approval of the district investment report. There are no objections. I'd like to all of the items on the consent agenda at once. Are there any objections? Not. Actually, our board council gave us, Mr. Treasurer, last board meeting that he was here, informed us that it's not necessarily accurate. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda items for Mr. Perez first, and seconded by Mrs. Carroll. Roll call, please, Dan.
Roll call. Okay. Paredes?
Yes.
Payroll? Yes. Simmons?
Yes.
Marks? Yes. Langston? Yes. Lunsford?
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on the agenda is committee reports. Are there any committee reports? We have the district leadership council report.
Yes. Ms. Marks?
Sure. We, at the district, fortunate enough to continue to be the representative of the leadership committee. And we did not have a meeting at the end of October. That was moved to meet again in January. But we continue to have rich discussions on professional development opportunities and communications between the leadership staff at all the schools. We'll also be reviewing some action plans for the remainder of the year. That's about it.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of bills. Mr. Simmons had the bills for the month. Mr. Simmons, what are yours?
I have the pleasure to review the bills this month, and my questions were appropriately addressed by Ms. LaBella. As such, I would move that we approve the bills in the amount of $1,025,879.80 for the month of November.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to approve the bills? Mr. Paredes, we have a roll call, please, Ken.
Okay. Payroll? Yes. Paredes?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Langston? Yes. Simmons?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on the agenda is approval of payroll for the month of October. The board is making a recommendation to approve payroll in the amount of $1,338,715.22. I will entertain a motion to accept the recommendation from the administration. Mrs. Harrell, is there a second? Mr. Paredes, may I have a roll call, please, Kathy?
Okay. Marks?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Langston?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on the agenda is a recommendation from the administration regarding vision insurance. Mr. Doster or Ms. LaBella, whoever would like to, please present.
Thank you very much. Ms. LaBelle and I were discussing, and we took a look at some options. If you'd like to discuss these options at no cost to the Board of Education for vision for employees, that would be really appreciated.
It's kind of it's a no cost to you, it's a need that, you know, a lot of employees that come to us, if they have some coverage, but if you have a PPO, you have none, so it's affordable, and it's a nice little plan.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the plan recommended by the administration at no cost to the district. Mrs. Harrell? Mr. Paredes? Roll call, please, Kathy.
Okay. Paredes?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Marks?
Yes.
Langston?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes, and the motion passes. Next on the agenda is approval of delegate assembly resolutions. We were given a list of resolutions by the administration. These are resolutions that will be voted on at the IASB conference. Let's entertain discussion discussion as to where the board stands as it relates to agreeing with the recommendations that have been made by the ISB, or if we disagree, our recommendations or our position taken to the ISB meeting by Mrs. Odom to vote on behalf of the district. So, this is the easiest way to do this. I'd like to start with, are there any of the resolutions that were presented that anyone is opposed to as presented by the ISB? Go ahead, Mr. Perez.
I oppose the district wellness plans tax holiday.
What number?
I'm sorry, this is number 3.
Page 11.
Okay, so if I'm correct, that was one that they said that they were not going to, they were recommending not to approve. So do you want to approve
Okay,
it?
I guess that's my question.
Okay.
So, I don't wish to approve that, so am I then?
So
Then we're in agreement.
Okay, good. My other one was number 6, which it says to adopt, was the Open Meetings Act Building Safety and Security. I think that despite the fact that you are presenting certain flaws to the security plan, I think that that's something that needs to be very clearly addressed. And my thought is that if you make that an executive meeting, that it will not be taken as, not as seriously, but I don't think it will be given the same urgency than it's addressed as an open meeting discussion item. You follow me? So that's my, if anyone has any counter opinion, that's fine.
Were there any other concerns about 6? Personally, I was a little concerned. I was just questioning how far can this go. I would be concerned that this policy would be used if there were things that were safety issues in other ways that needed to be revealed about something in the building, such as asbestos or mold or anything like that. So I do get the position that we want to take in terms of violence in the building, but I'm just kind of curious as to how far you could go with this policy and what it could knock to a community that needs to know about this to their children. So,
The way it's stated here, I don't agree.
is there anyone else who's opposed?
I am as well. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that there may be discussions around some security issues that you might feel like you don't want to have an open session, but this is an all or nothing resolution, so you can't pick and choose safety and security, and I believe that the public needs to know if we have safety issues in our school and security issues. So I would not be in favor of us supporting their position to adopt this resolution.
This is a question I had about that. Is there, do you have an opportunity to say within language, or is it just all or nothing at this point?
It's all or nothing because they had the discussion and their.
This is the way they voted, so we can't even say, well, I agree.
You can't amend it.
Okay.
You just vote each article. So 6 is.
So it looks like we're 3-3 here. I don't know if we can to this one.
No, I'm saying that I disagree with it, and
Okay.
at least we can't.
So we do not support number 6. Are there any other resolutions that anyone on the board is opposed to?
There was one. There was a money one. I wanted to get some clarification.
I have concerns about number 9, data equity. The one that allows school to give information to individuals that is not as a unit. My concern is will this information be given with or without court consent?
Is this within the vertical alignment of the units? So for example, you know, explain this.
Yeah, you go ahead.
You're thinking like Parker to HF.
Yeah.
But we're in different districts. So I think they're talking about the unit districts where elementary school, high school,
K through 12.
K through 12, they can transfer information. That's not what they're talking about. our situation where K through 8 is one district,
Right.
and then HF is its own district. And our district sharing information with a high school district, presumably HF, without parental consent. And this is saying that that's what should happen. But I think Mr. Lunsford is saying, and I agree, that parents may not want the high school to know. I mean, say the child didn't perform very well in middle school because has down turnover and leave, and they're going to be a new student in high school. You may not want the high school to know, you know, how poorly they may have done in the past.
Okay, and I guess in keeping with the way it's stated, I see your point. It makes a lot of sense. I just see tremendous value, and as a high school teacher, that, you know, to have like a history of the student's development through K through 8 is really, really valuable as an educator. However, it's certainly parental.
Can you please give me that number again, because I didn't see it, I'm sorry, but there's no allegation over it.
That's number 9. So I have no problem sharing information, but I think parental consent should do that. Well, I think you're right.
It doesn't say that.
It does not say that here, right?
So just in your head count, I'm in there.
Currently, as it stands with parental consent is part of this changing. That's what I wasn't sure about.
One district to another, so.
And currently, they cannot do that right now, and they're going to say what people. What are the benefits?
What Ms. Corey has suggested is that now you have a history of the time of the child learning, which may be more beneficial in the classroom.
That's where I'm going.
2 against, 4 for, so I guess we do support the position. Okay. Are there any other resolutions that the board is opposed to the position of the ISD?
Do you have a finance one?
I can't find it. There was one, I had a question, I wanted to ask you. Did
Yes.
you, when you read them, did any of those funny things pop out of you? You missed it?
15.
22 popped out at me, and I would like to ask Ms. LaBella to help us understand 22 before.
I'm not mistaken, 22 is the one where it starts talking about equity of funding as it relates to property taxes. Is that correct?
School funding or
School funding and taxation reform.
This is the one where you start getting into the conversation about having property tax relief and the state appropriately, adequately, and equitably funding schools. So again, it's kind of that trade-off between whether we should be property tax driven or income tax driven coming from the state, is my understanding of that resolution.
And based on your understanding of it, would we be better or worse off accepting what is being proposed here?
My opinion would be worse. Oh, no, what they're proposing would be better.
What they're proposing?
Just to clarify, we understand that this is a lobbying organization, and what we're doing is just lending weight to what this lobbying organization is going to put its strength behind.
The two districts.
Just want to be clear that
Two districts that proposed that one are very similar to yours. So they're looking at very similar demographics, property tax base, those kinds of things.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Are there any other resolutions that the board members are opposed to? Not, we support all except for number 6, as presented.
Ms. Brito, would you send an email to Ms. Odom? To let her know?
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is monthly financial reporting.
Yeah.
Mr. Doster?
Yeah, that is just a miscellaneous type of item. That's just a report, basically a summary for the board to look at. If you have any questions on it when you're finished, you can, after you're done reviewing it, give Ms. LaBelle a call. Okay.
Next on the agenda is executive session. We will be going into executive session regarding executive session. Mrs. Langston and Mrs. Harrell, roll call please.
Okay, Marks?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Langston?